But Paul is trying to give us the understanding that the way of grace, the way of faith is so far superior to the law, because the way of grace and the way of faith is giving us direct access to a God that the law never gave us direct access to. Amen? Amen? There is no altar at which we lay the gift or the sacrifice. We become the gift and the sacrifice, laying our lives before very God wherever we are. Amen? Amen? And we have to kind of, it's an old system that we have to let leak out. A church building should make you feel holier than your living room. Amen? We have to be holy holy on the spot. Amen? Because there is no mediator. There is no holy place. There is no go-between. Amen? Knowing that our access to God comes through Christ. Christ is God. Are we okay with that? Are we cool with that understanding? We cool with that understanding? Because the whole mediator thing, I've heard so many people talk about it that it just seems like, I don't know. I don't know. It goes on to say, it says, is the law opposed? Is the law opposed? And he says, no, it's not. Is the law opposed to the promises? Absolutely not. Last week we talked about some of the nuances and the difference between a contract and a covenant. And I hope we all walked away from that thinking that a covenant is much more beneficial to us than a contract. Amen? Amen? The law was between two people, two parties. Between the people and God. And an agreement that's founded on law. It's going to include at least two parties. We talked about this last week. And the agreement depends on both sides keeping the agreement. That's the position of those who put themselves under the trust of the law. Amen? But a promise depends on one person. Yeah? Isn't that what we say? I promise. I promise. The way of grace depends entirely on God. And that's something that we benefit from. The way of grace depends entirely on God. And see, married folk need to understand this too. That a promise is one-sided. Amen? Amen? None of us, we all kind of took the, sort of the same version of the traditional marriage vows, and none of those vows ever said, I promise to love you as long as you don't start acting like a fool. You might have thought that, but you ain't say it. Amen? Amen? I promise to love, trust, and honor as long as I feel like it. As long as I find you worthy. No. The promise was, I promise. I promise. And for a lot of us, we actually said, for better. Now, did some of y'all mumble this next word? Or worse. I promise for worse. Amen? God made that vow. God said, I promise. For worse. Because sometimes you're going to act kind of okay. Most of the time. Amen? And the way of grace depends entirely on God and God's promise. It is God's promise, and no man can ever do anything to alter the promise. Amen? Amen? And it's not a matter of getting blessings from God and not getting the blessings from God. It's just a matter of which blessings you're going to receive from God. God blesses you on your worst day. God blesses you on your most rebellious day. God blesses you on the day you intend to do harm to other people. Every person on earth benefits from the blessings of God, but only his children get the blessing of being children. Amen? We sin, and the love and grace of God stands unchanged. He still loves us, still provides for us. Amen? And surely it is better to depend on the grace of an unchanging God than to depend on our own helpless, half-hearted, sometimey effort. Amen? Amen? Because we go on and we're looking at 21 and we see that the law has no power to give life. The law is only words. The law is only rules. The law can only put in our minds, put a bug in our ear, give us these ideas of behavior, tell us what things are supposed to kind of look like and what things should never look like. The law can only demand, it can only say, do this, don't do that, don't do that. And the law is external. It's completely external. It's always going to be on the outside of us. The law has no spirit. The law has no life. The law has no power to enable you to do what it's asking you to do. Amen? The law just says, do this. How? Figure it out. Don't do that. How can I not? Figure it out. That's the law. Amen? The law cannot help any person to any degree whatsoever try to keep the law. And the law demands obedience. It demands obedience, and it leaves us entirely on our own to struggle and figure it out how to obey. But thank God for being God. Thank God for Jesus Christ. Amen? Because Jesus Christ is both a person and a life. Amen? Jesus is able to put spirit and life into the words and the rules of the law. Jesus is able to live the life described by the words and the rules of the law. And Jesus is able to inject both the idea and the power into the person's mind and life. Jesus gives life, Jesus gives ability, and Jesus gives hope. Any student will open up a book and read and not understand what's going on. And then the tutor and the teacher will come over and give some explanation and work through it a little bit. And the student will go, now I get it. Now I get it. Amen? Now, Jesus sets the standard. And his life, not only did he set the standard, but his life and his spirit gives us the power to obey. And his hope gives us the reason to obey. And his promise gives us the motivation. Amen?